the second line, you stepped on
it. Hell of a day to give up drugs.
I haven't seen that movie probably in 35 years.
It's still funny.
I suspect it's as funny as it was the day we first saw it.
What did you say?
I said I suspect it's as funny as the day I first saw it. That was brilliant.
Everyone's being quiet. See, this is the part that I'm ending is the quiet part. It's just now.
I'll say you want some chit chat as we blaze into YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. We're just coming in. We're enough of this whole like silent treatment in YouTube. We're just going to keep talking.
Look out, YouTube! Here we come.
Exactly.
Well, Victor still doesn't have his saxophone out, so.
Oh, that's what we should do. We start off sometime, and Victor but it just cuts into the middle of Victor playing and everything else.
Just has some effects of applause below it.
Yeah,
Alex
exactly.
As long as you're the one that talks to my wife about me playing my saxophone at 8 o'clock in the morning, that's fine with me.
There you go.
I thought you were going to respond to the what's the vector,
You could
Victor?
mime, Victor. You could mime.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome to Office Hours. If you're in YouTube and you want to be in Zoom, you can actually you can do that if you want. There's a link down below. If you're here as an attendee and you're wondering how these panelists got to be panelists and why they're there and you're not here, it's because we showed up early. So you have to be here by 6:40 to be at Pacific Standard Time to be in the panel. We open at 6. Just chit chat between 6 and 6:40, having our tea, having our coffee, getting caught up, getting ready to go. We start doing our mic checks at 6:40 to 6:42. Once we do the mic checks, it's mic check. We're making sure everyone's ready for the show. After that, we've closed the event for panelists. So get here early, raise your digital hand, and we'd love to have you. So anyway, so that's we've got the first hour is all just general questions, whatever questions you have about media production, virtual production, all those things. We depend on you. As an attendee, there's no freeloaders here. As an attendee, we expect you to be asking questions. You're driving the conversation. We can't do this without you. So make sure to get those questions in. And the best thing to do is to think about them all day. Just if a question comes up, I don't understand how that works. Then write it down somewhere, put it in Apple Notes or write it down on a little piece of paper, and then bring it in tomorrow and help us keep this show moving. It's really all up to you. And then the second hour we have a special guest or we have a special subject. On Mondays is kind of a wild card. Tuesdays is audio. Wednesdays is video. Thursdays we have a special guest. Today we have Graham Kerr. He at one point was probably the most popular, or one of the most popular chefs in the online celebrity chefs in the world. And so he's going to take us through a little bit of memory lane and talk about what he's doing right now, and talk about what it took to do that in front of 200 million people. So anyway, so he's going to be here in the second hour. And then tomorrow we'll be talking about, last week we talked about being a freelancer, what it takes to be a good freelancer, or how to get more work. Today we'll talk, the Friday we're going to talk about being a producer. What does it take to really manage our relationship between our freelancers and our client? So anyway, so that we're going to be talking about that tomorrow, and then education on Saturday. And if you want to share this, you can actually. What you do is you don't share your own link. If you share your own link, then everyone comes in as you. So share the link that I just posted into Makana. That's the one you want to use. And without further ado, I'm going to be here for the first half hour. So vote questions up that you think that that I should answer, or if it matters. I think we have such a great panel here. I don't think it really matters, but I'll be here for the first half hour. I'm in production for the next week, so I'm going to be hit and miss here. But what I'm going to try to do is be here tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll be there the whole time, and then trying to be here at least a half an hour just to kind of hang out with you, because I miss you all. When I take the whole day off, I'm just like, oh, dag nabbit, it doesn't work for me. So anyway, it's good to see all of you. And Bill, why don't we jump into the first?
Sure. TJ Asher, who's normally in the panel from Minneapolis, Minnesota, says, Alex, you mentioned that you like to light green screen with green lights. Since Kino is not making green bulbs anymore, would gelling lights with a green gel work? Say something like a Roscolux 30 green.
I have used gel in the past. It's not quite as good. You lose a little bit on it. You have to be super careful about the gel because it tends to be a little bit more diffuse. So you just have to be super careful of that green getting on things, so, but yeah, I have used gel to do that, but you be careful of flagging. If any of that green gets on to your subject, they'll start to disappear too. And so that's the kind of thing to keep in mind. Bill?
Yeah, the same exact stuff. When I've used green bulbs in a Kino Flow, most programs have spill suppression, and this is what it's trying to get rid of. It's the fact that you, particularly if you get a talent anywhere close to the green screen and it's got active light coming off of it, it's going to infect particularly their edges, and it's going to eat away your key.
And the one thing to know is that just remember that the further away that green screen is from the person, the more you can move them away from that. That means that the green screen is one big green light. It's reflecting back green, and it's diffuse. So the angle of incidence of that green screen, if you're right up against the green screen, is coming down like this, and it's hitting the top of your shoulders and your hair. As you move away, the light that hits the camera, or the light that or what it sees, the angle of incidence of that green screen starts to become more and more vertical coming through. And so what that means is you don't get as much spill. And so we try to keep people, we really shoot for 10 feet, 10 feet from the green screen. If you can do that, especially for stand-ups, knee up, which I recommend. We have a lot of clients that are like, we want them to be standing on the floor. And we're like, do you really need that? Because it's like 5 times more harder to get a good key with their feet on the floor as opposed to cutting them off at the knees. So so you think, but we've done it. But it's something that we try to avoid if we can. But once you do that, getting 10 feet back is going to make it easy. I think I talked about it yesterday. We used to key anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a month of content. That's a lot of green screen. And the only way we survived it was because of really, really flat green screen, green on green, good distance. If you're going to do a lot of green screen, really taking advantage of what you can do in camera makes all the difference. It's not about the keyer. Like anything can key the way I shoot. The way I shoot people sitting, if I don't have to have them interact with it and they're not standing on it, I can key it. I can probably write my own keyer in a script. I would do it with like 10 lines of code. So it's really not hard to key if you get it all done in camera. No, next question.
John Preto in the panel out of Las Vegas says, I was watching youtube.com on my smart TV last night, and I noticed that the ADs are about 3 dB higher in volume than the programs are. Do they not check the LUFs on the ADs, or do they allow for higher levels on ADs?
Sorry, that's ads.
Ads. I'm sorry. I was thinking it was an associate director.
That is a common,
think about it.
Bumping 3 dB is a pretty common broadcast technique. It's been used for the last 30 years.
And
so
the solution apparently is to complain to Congress.
Oh, there you go.
It falls under the Calm Act.
The Calm Act, yes. And for those of you who don't know, the Calm Act was a thing to try to keep the massive numbers of complaints hitting the FCC about how loud the commercials were under control.
Yeah, they're assuming that in the old days, they assumed that you were getting up and going somewhere, so they wanted to make sure you could hear it while you were walking around. Like, you're off doing something else. We want to make sure that you hear it. No, really, that was the reason, is that they assumed that you were doing something else further away from the TV than during the viewing time, because back then, we used to actually watch ads during TV. Now you only see them if you go to YouTube. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
You could do the silly thing and put the leveling onto your TV and then rip your hair out because it's still not leveling properly.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing that we're going to keep on seeing is the desperation that continues to build around advertising as it becomes less and less impactful. That's the real challenge that a lot of advertisers have, is that now they're trying to stick them in the middle of these videos. They're trying to stick them in front, but oftentimes the most valuable, from an advertiser's perspective, some of the most valuable consumers are buying their way out. They subscribe to whether it's the YouTube Premium or other things to basically opt out, whether in Apple TV and other things there. So it's going to be interesting to see how advertising survives as a lot of people move to either subscription services or sponsored content, which is a slightly different thing. Go ahead, Stuart and John.
Just a small segue on ads. For all the people doing YouTube, is there a way to time where the ads are on your YouTube video? I've noticed a lot, it just suddenly interrupts, but on one of the motoring channels that's actually regular programming that they then do a YouTube version of, they actually fade to black, and then you get the YouTube video or YouTube advert. And I thought it's a much nicer presentation.
I don't know what the mechanism is.
traditional.
I do know that it's possible to time them, and I don't know what the mechanism is. But Bruce, and then John.
Yeah, so on YouTube, once you get the authority or the authorization to run ads on your show, you need to run at least, I think it's like 6 minutes or 8 minutes long before you can put ads inside your video. And sometimes that key point of placing that ad isn't exact by the producer. So yeah, if you produce your show to create ads inside, you can time it out, but it's basically on the producer who's placing those ads in their program.
Go ahead, John Preto.
My question is, I know that if you upload anything out of a certain LUF level up to your regular YouTube channel, you'll get banged or they'll take the volume down. But do they automatically check that when you produce an ad for YouTube as well? Or do they allow 3 dB higher than normal?
I think they're allowing it because it's that way for a lot of stuff. You know, it's annoyingly loud. So I think that if they weren't allowing it, it wouldn't happen. So that's my guess. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, YouTube placed ads, I think they can choose, or I think you can designate a spot, but I think they have some AI working there that listens for a pause or looks for a break or scene change, and looks ahead a little bit because you're delayed a little bit, and it'll insert the ad and pause the video and then come back out, at least so it's not interrupting mid-word, and it always overlaps the sound and the video. It throws you back about a second before it interrupted you, so you don't really lose anything.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting test if I had monetization, is to put a black second, in there and just see if it automatically finds that black second of, oh, that's a good place for an ad. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Next question.
Tim Corbin from Baltimore says, Jeffrey or others, what are the thoughts on using a Pi as a dedicated Zoom guest machine? Obviously, there's no dedicated app, but what are the thoughts on screen scraping a pinned guest using Zoom Web?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey, and then John.
Yeah, even though you can do a Pi screen, if you're using it for broadcast, it's probably not going to be your best bet. I'm going to be playing with some higher end SMB type boards, and just to see how they'll work with processor. Like NVIDIA has the Jetson Xavier, which is a 6-core processor inside. So that's a little bit more. It's about $300-400 board, but that might be the better solution if you're doing broadcast back and forth.
You go, John Preto.
There is a dedicated app for Linux. I haven't played with it. I'm going to poke around with it and see what I can.
But it doesn't work in ARM. It works only in an Intel environment.
Or AMD, yeah.
Next question.
Next question comes from our own Hasmuk of Cape Town, South Africa. Brio, ATEM, and Qlab. Victor mentioned way back that Qlab recognizes a USB webcam attached to a computer. Well, with Lauren's advice, I've managed to get the Brio as an HDMI webcam into the ATEM via Qlab. Is this a sustainable video chain? Why do I need an HDMI camera?
I don't think that you need one. I mean, you can definitely work around it if you want to use the ATEM Mini as without any delay and as it's designed to use it. You would need HDMI, but you don't. You can definitely find ways to do it in software. I don't think I would try to use anything to get HDMI back out into the ATEM Mini at that point. I think that if I was using an ATEM Mini, I would just use the ATEM Mini. If I'm going to do it somewhere software downstream. Now, Lawrence, you're talking about using that as one of the sources inside of Qlab. Is that right? So the two of them are going into Qlab, and you're really switching between the two of them in Qlab?
Yeah, I don't use webcams like that, but I helped Hasmuk setting it up.
Right.
But Qlab recognizes every camera that's connected to your Mac, and then you can just send it out to the
I think the only reason that I would say that would be more difficult is just because the interface isn't really built to be a switcher. I mean, Qlab is you're kind of using it outside of its normal usage, and so mileage may vary in that environment. There's no reason why I couldn't do that, but I think that your interface to interact would probably be better if you had everything going into a switcher. Whether it's a software switcher like Mimo or OBS or a hardware switcher like the ATEM. No. Next question.
John Welly in Midvale says, for recording demonstrations of an iPhone, iPad, or Android, how can screen glare be reduced or eliminated? I don't want to just record the screen directly because I want to show my hand gestures and the physical button pushes.
I mean, the big thing that we do is angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. You figure out where that light is, and you move it. You either move the light, or you move the screen, or you move the camera. There's so there's just, and it's just anytime we do that, it's just there's this little math of just figuring out where you're going to set it so that it looks good. But there's not any great way of getting rid of the glare, because the things you do to get rid of the glare will also reduce the clarity of the screen. Courtney, and then Jeffrey.
It's a lot easier to eliminate glare these days with LCDs than it was in the old CRT days when they were spherical or cylindrical glass tubes. But yeah, angle of incidence. And the other thing to watch out for is moire if you're shooting screens with a high-def camera, because depending upon the resolution of the screen you're shooting and the distance of the camera and the focus ability of the lens, you're going to get funny color fringing and beat patterns if you get in too close. And see, it has certain beat levels, so you find if you move the camera back just a field or two, the moire will go away. So you can adjust that way.
We have a lot of that with LED walls too. So it's but much worse. There's always a zoom level you can't go to when you're doing an LED wall, or you'll see the moire. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Kevin.
Speaking, on the moires, have you ever had to remove a screen protector from somebody's phone or tablet because it's not it's doing the privacy or something?
If you're going to shoot, you got to take that off. you can't shoot with a screen protector on, or a privacy thing. But why would you? You're shooting it. Like, you can take it off at that point. It's not, you don't need it. You're trying to shoot the video.
Well, if it's your phone or somebody else's phone,
I would just tell them they need to take it off. We're not going to shoot it.
Alternatively, they could use some software to interface, so you could screen scrape or use that as a footage. I think your phone for Android works on that. You can basically put your phone's application on a PC or Mac screen and
I think the problem is he wants to show the gestures. The gestures, I see. Like him doing what he's doing. That's the trick there. Next question.
Yeah, that's lighting skills. Tom Weiland of San Francisco. A friend of mine needs to transfer some umatic 3/4 inch tapes to edit with. Any suggestions on an economical encoder?
We need to know if it's low or high band.
He doesn't specify.
There is there's a place in the Bay Area. It's down in the South Bay, where there's a guy that basically all he does is fix all these professional tape decks, but he also does transfers. You might want to go up on Discord and ping Marty Brennis. Marty is usually the person who knows the people who do that kind of thing. So he usually has a line on somebody locally to find it if you're here in the Bay Area. But look for Marty in Discord. Go ahead, Bill.
I never did the umatic stuff, but I did a lot of VHS and stuff like that. Time-based correctors are your friend. It's an old piece of equipment that's not in use much anymore, but it took an analog signal and made sure that its timing was at least correct, so you have a reasonable chance of getting all the fields and sync pulses in the right order.
To the SIMT.
Yeah.
Good. And there's services that do it, and I highly recommend a service. The amount of time it'll take you to get it right out of it. There's people who just do this is all they do, or they have a room that just has a bunch of different decks, and it's just going to be a lot more efficient to have somebody do it unless you're going to do it all the time. If you're going to turn into an archive business, then do it yourself, and then you can do it for other people too. But if you're going to do one of them, just get somebody to do that.
And I'm going to make one more little note. If you have tapes and they're sitting there, if you've stored them flat, get them upright on the edge, because that traditional little mess at the bottom is often because of edge curl. They've been sitting flat for a long time. So you'll see often those old analog sources play back and there'll be some rash at the bottom. That's usually from edge tape curl.
And just remember that they're still sensitive to magnets, wherever you put them.
Very much.
We have a lot of things that we don't care about anymore. Like we're like, oh, magnets aren't a big deal. To tapes, they
damp.
Yeah.
Don't forget the damp.
Yeah. We used to delete them by putting them on a degausser, which vibrated them with magnetic force. You just want to.
You didn't wear your watch.
Be careful of that. We're gonna keep moving. Next question.
Okay, moving on to James Babbitt in San Diego here. For in-ear monitors, would you choose Ear Hero or N-Ear Bumblebee or Etymotic?
Well, if we're not talking about money, I would get the Bumblebee. Like that's the best one. Like it's not. I mean, I think that if I was going to stack them up, I'd probably. I mean, Etymotic makes a bunch of different qualities. So if you get the really high Etymotic ones, you might find it nice. But I think the Bumblebee for an in-ear is probably as an IFB. Is it asked in IFB or in-ear?
It just says for in-ear monitors. Now I would think that means music. I don't think it means what we do here with the little speech stuff. But
if you're using them as IFBs, then I would say Bumblebee. If you're an Ear Hero is probably would be after that. If you're using them as real in-ear monitors, I'd probably go with the Etymotic or Ultimate Ears. You can get them. I mean, if you start really wanting to spend money, you can get ones that are formed to your ear. That's what most artists that we work with have. They all own their own. They just pop them in. They're a pretty good investment. But I think I've had Etymotics for years. Before that's what I used when I have wired. I use the Apple. I think the Etymotic 3s or EC3s or something like that have the mic and the thing that I will say about the Etymotics as a wired to my phone was that it was the clearest mic with the best audio combination. So I've probably owned 15 of them. Like they don't stand a wash very well, in case you're wondering. I've tested that many times, and so far they all failed. Anyway, Mike Burns.
Yeah. So speaking of in-ear monitors, I'm looking forward to getting my $50 in-ear monitors from the Apple Store today. I used to sell those for years, and I'm shocked that they sell something that's wireless at $50. So can't wait to see the quality of that.
I will say that the at a higher price as far as wireless goes, the AirPod Pros are. It took me a long time to buy them. I finally bought them. They're amazing. Like I'm kind of surprised by the whole. And then when you watch something with Atmos, they're even more amazing. It's just technology's come a long way. The other ones, I realize the AirPods, I just got used to the wireless, but AirPods Pro, I just want to leave them in. If the batteries didn't die so often, I'd leave them in all day probably. Anyway, next question.
Yeah. So Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen said, is there a cheaper wireless HDMI than the Hollylands? I would even try going under that. Or should I even try going under that?
Is it
wireless HDMI is what he's looking for. So some sort of a transmitter receiver, I would assume, to get a signal from between a camera and a monitor.
And how much are the Hollylands?
Jeffrey's got them pulled up, it looks like.
I don't know what the price is on them.
Yeah, I've never used it either.
Yeah. My experience is generally with Teradeks. It's all I've done with wireless for a long time.
There you go, $700 or $650.
Yeah, it's a good price. I wouldn't try to go below that. That's a pretty darn good price for a wireless HDMI. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney. Then Lawrence.
Yeah, the thing you get into with the cheaper ones is they're doing a long GOP compression, and there's quite a bit of latency in them. Mm-hmm. And the Teradeks are known for their low latency. So if you're planning on operating your camera off of a wireless link, don't even think about it. And if you have a person watching that monitor who is listening on a direct analog transmitter receiver, it's going to be out of sync.
A lot. and then also you have to deal with cutting between cameras. You will jump back and you'll have audio sync issues and that type of thing. That's why low latency is so important with those cameras. Go ahead, Lawrence.
I have 2 pair of the Hollylands, and they work very reliable.
Okay.
There's a little delay, but
right.
For the price, I can highly recommend them.
Okay,
and they just recently introduced last week a Pro version. So you can not only do HDMI to HDMI, but you can also automatically publish your feed to an iPad as a confident monitor for the producers. It publishes to 4 iPhones at the same time. So
that's great.
It's a great system.
As a production unit, that delay becomes a big deal. As a producer unit or a director unit, they're great. Because if it's a second or two off, doesn't really matter to them. They're just looking at the camera tap. So, Lawrence, are you using it as production camera or as a?
Yes, I do, but it's only milliseconds off.
Right.
It's really and then
okay.
Sometimes I connect projectors that way, or a keynote a computer that's on stage, a keynote. That
what kind of range do you get?
I don't know about the top of my head. I should look at the specs, but it's pretty far.
Great.
Which model number is it?
I think I have the 300. I think the 300.
Okay, because there's a 2000. I'm on the one with 2000, and it's got
no. I have the cheapest
2000
version.
foot range. Yeah.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I was just going to ask if Lawrence knows what frequency band they're in, if they're at 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz, or.
I'll look it up.
They're 5.
It can be 5s. Okay.
Next question.
Okay, Roger Miles from Lake Zurich, Illinois. And does anybody have any experience with the new Apple Beats Flex headphones?
Not yet. Yeah.
They're coming. They're coming.
So Mike,
I'll have a review tomorrow.
Well, okay, perfect. Mike will be back tomorrow, and he'll tell us he's got them coming today. So ask that question again tomorrow, and we'll answer it. Next question.
Moving on to Tony Mobley, often of the panel from Newman, Georgia. ATEM mini users, is it better to have ATEM connected to Ethernet directly or connect ATEM to the computer for Ethernet?
You never connect the ATEM to the computer with Ethernet. Not directly. You put it through a switch. You could have them talk to each other through a switch, but I don't think they'll talk to each other directly over Ethernet. So you would plug them both into a switch so they can talk back and forth.
I think they will talk directly. You can plug a straight cable across, and it detects the fact that it's.
Oh, okay. I'm wrong.
Host to client, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Jeffrey. Can't hear you, Jeffrey.
Sorry. The only way I can see that happening is if you have, like on Mac, you can actually send it as a peer-to-peer. So you can actually send out a DHCP call to the ATEM. But I don't think there's a way to actually put in. No, there isn't a way to put an IP address through the software in there. So you could put an IP address, and then you could forego the switch if you needed to.
I guess you could do that for a longer run if the ATEM was a lot further away from your computer. Otherwise, I just use USB-C rather than the Ethernet. But if you want to control it, I guess that would be the way to do that. Has anyone done that? I always plug everything into a switch, so I just always
give it a try.
Yeah, we'll give it a shot.
I think Grant did that during the demo of the ATEM Mini originally.
Okay, there we go. Very good. Next question.
Tyler Roberts from Chambersburg says, I am helping a fire training center. They have people in separate classrooms watching training on a TV hooked up to a PC. The live stream is RTMP, but could possibly do other types. Currently sending to YouTube and watching the feed. Looking for options that just keep to the local network to reduce latency.
Multicast. I mean, that's when we're gone. It's a little bit more of a network issue. So you have to decide what your IT has set up. But what we use when we stream on-prem is multicast. And typically what we've done in the past is set up. You can do it on a Mac, but we usually set up a Wowza server, and we have served up to 30,000 people with multicast. So 6 Wowza servers, so 6 blades doing multicast across a golf course, so that everybody can watch the local feed of the TV networks, so that they have access to it. So if you're sitting on hole 18, you can watch hole 4, that kind of thing. The network IT folks hate multicast. It's not super well tested, so you have to have it really tied in. We've worked in some facilities where they really know it, and when they know it and they build all the ports out for it, they love it. But that's probably the lowest latency of easy to plug in. And there's boxes that do it for you. I can't think of the name of them right now, but there's boxes that you can just plug. You don't have to do any streaming or anything else. It's like a transmitter, and then they have receivers, and the transmitter is a couple grand, and the receivers are all like a couple $100, and you just put them on the back of TVs and you just plug an Ethernet into them, and then you can just change channels. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, we're doing this with our security system at the office. We have a little Magewell NDI converter that takes HDMI to NDI, and then anybody with NDI monitor can open it up and look at the feed. And
that's interesting.
It's pretty cool. The other option would be just Zoom. I mean, you can just share screen in Zoom and then kick it out and have invite people to pick it up. Super low latency and free.
Right. Maybe not the quality that they want, but that would be the only thing you're giving up if you try to just do it in Zoom, because you're still going to the internet and back. I guess there's a Zoom on-prem as well that we haven't. Have you tested that at all, Guy?
I have it. I have a server ready to go to install it. I've
I bet you
directed our
not.
IT guys to do it.
bet
It's
you-
not high priority for them right now.
I bet you that's probably pretty good quality. Jeffrey?
Yeah, you can also do NDI from the desktop if you do a screen scrape into like OBS or something like that.
And just a reminder that we still have a half an hour, and the questions now will be we have to stretch them out for 6 minutes because the attendees need to ask more questions. So just letting you know, no pressure, but you need to ask more questions. With that, I'm going to bow out. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the panel for being here, holding the space for us. And I'm in a pretty intense production right now, and so I'm going to be a little bit sparse, but I'm going to try to come in at least a half an hour every day, just to hang out with all of you. And then but things will get much more intense for all of you once we get to November. Then I get through my little production. It's been a couple months of grind, and now we're really in the grind part of it. So anyway, so thank you everybody for being here and taking care of the space, and have a good time.
Thank you, Alex, for setting all this up. And you're sending host to me, Jeffrey, or Stuart?
I've already Stuart. I think
Stuart has host.
Stuart has host now.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't leave with.
Yep, I'm leaving, not ending. I looked down. I was like, make sure it's right. All right,
good.
See you guys. All right, bye.
Take care.
I have so much power right now.
I know. Don't you feel? Don't let it go to your.
You might want to make Bill the co-host just in case your internet drops, even though I'm co-host. At least if I drop out and he drops, then it's just redundancy.
Yeah, backup and tertiary backup. Okay, we're still in the question. So unless somebody wants to have some. Oh, go ahead, Stuart.
It's done. You're our co-host as well, Nelson.
Thank you. Yes, I think I saw something flash up on my screen here. Does anybody want to take the questioning token for today, or do you want me to keep doing it? I guess I'll keep going along. Nobody raised a hand and volunteered. So moving on to Ruben Marchenez from Grand Rapids, Michigan, says, because of the pandemic and local ordinances, we have to maintain distances. How can I split the video to 4 rooms of a church? Right now we have one PTz Optics camera with HDMI and SDI outputs. What do I need? Small budget. Note he's working in 1080p. So Courtney has his hand up first. Go, Courtney.
Well, just get you an SDI distribution amplifier. You know, Blackmagic makes them, Aja makes them 1 to 4, 1 to 8, and then take your output of your switcher or your camera and feed it to 4 different monitors that take SDI in. Or you can also get, of course, HDMI splitters that will go 1 to 4, and you should be able to handle it with little or no latency. And the nice thing with HDI is, well, SDI will too, but most SDI monitors, a lot of them don't have speakers in them. If you're going to a regular TV, then you could go HDMI and carry the audio as well to the individual rooms, as long as you don't turn them up too high and bleed into your set.
Great. Jeffrey?
A lot of the answers from the last question are going to apply here. You can do an NDI solution. You could get those. What was that the name of that company? The hand whatever that was, the wireless HDMI. You can try that. So a lot of different options there.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else? Anybody else work in church video a lot? And Stuart, go ahead.
It's not church video specific, but it's video distribution. BirdDog also do a encoder and the opposite, a decoder that does HDMI or SDI out. So you can go that way if you want to.
Yeah,
it uses NDI
only because of the budget level. I think is not NBC. Courtney, you had a comment?
No, I was just pointing out that Stuart's the BirdDog is an NDI encoder. He didn't mention that, but that's what it's encoding to, and then it can go over Ethernet anywhere you want to, and decode with another BirdDog decoder. It encodes and decodes. It does both, so you can use those little BirdDogs in either direction.
Okay, I'm going to double up on Alex's promo, which is that we only have, I think, 6 questions in the queue. So if you have had something that you want to talk about and get a question into office hours, it's a great time to go into the chat function and head to Makana and put questions in. Moving to Paul Shadwell from Turbental. Davinci Resolve Studio comes with a lot of LUTs for different cameras. I was looking for the same in Final Cut Pro 10, but I couldn't find any. Are there any sets of LUTs, for example, Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K that I can use in Final Cut Pro 10? And since I'm a Final Cut Pro 10 editor myself, you can load LUTs into Final Cut Pro 10 pretty easily. And so that you should kind of phase one know that there are two different kinds of LUTs. There are camera LUTs, which often comes from the camera manufacturers. And when you get your software, you need to look up in the inspector, open up the information, and you will see a place where you can often add LUTs, and that will show you the list of LUTs that come pre-built into Final Cut. It has a lot of the A-list cameras that people are using a lot. If you want to load additional LUTs beyond that, there is a way to do that, and you can search on the internet and find out a way to do that. Those camera LUTs are generally to correct or give you a decent monitor picture from the way the camera is set up in the base. The other type of LUTs are look LUTs that come later, so you don't want to kind of mix them up. If you're trying to get a decent picture from your camera out to your monitor in a shooting situation, you want to stick with camera LUTs and then hold off on those look LUTs, which a lot of the things you'll find on the internet are designed to do things like that famous teal look and stuff like that. And those aren't really the kind of camera LUTs you want to use up in the upper parts of your workflow. Anybody else want to talk about LUT use in Final Cut? Okay, hopefully I was clear enough and covered most of that stuff. Lauren Strobe is in with the next question. Strobe, I'm sorry. Lauren's, how I should have put the diacriticals around your name long ago. I didn't. What is it?
Lawrence Strobe.
Strobe. So it's a long
Strobe,
E.
yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
remember that.
Thank you, Ben.
That's right. Out of Hermosa Beach says, other than Philips Hue, are there other more affordable smart light bulb brands that can be controlled natively over Stream Deck? Philips Hue. Okay, Courtney's back in. Good, Courtney.
Yeah, there's a company called Fate, F-E-I-T, I think it is. They make a lot of Wi-Fi based, they don't require a hub of any kind, and they interface directly to 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and you can individually address them and set their colors and brightness and signal level, and they work with the A-Lady, Amazon, Alexa, trying not to trigger mine, and the Google Homes.
Philips Hue seems to be very popular.
It was very overpriced, you know, and I've found them to be quite expensive compared to the others that are on the market.
Okay, Lawrence is next, and Jeffrey. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm aware of some other brands, but what I'm specifically trying to do is operate them with Stream Deck. And I need a plugin. Only the Philips Hue, as far as I can understand, has a plugin for Stream Deck, but maybe Jeffrey has another idea.
Yeah, there is one other company. I'm not sure the name of it, but I'm trying to madly go into my companion to see if there is a light there, because there are a few light controllers. The only other thing I can think of offhand is if you decide to go DMX, you could definitely set up Stream Deck for that. Let's see, Think M Blink LED processing through Zyman. And there's a host of different lightings. I don't know if they're DMX enabled or not, but you can definitely. Do you have a companion on your Stream Deck?
I do, and I use it. But the problem with companion is that it's very CPU hungry. It takes like 15% of my CPU time at my computer.
So I set up a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that for that single purpose. Yeah.
Other than that, that's all I have. Yeah.
Okay, Courtney, I saw you vaguely wave. Are you okay, or do you want to?
I was just wondering if Stream Deck has a plugin for Google Home and Amazon Control for their control apps. If there's hooks in there, I'm not sure.
So maybe take a look and do some Googling.
I haven't seen anything, but there is an open API. So there might be somebody's doing something third party off of it. So we could check GitHub.
Okay. Moving on to Jeffrey Powers of Madison. Here's a nice open-ended question. Quibi is shuttering. Discuss. Why did that service with all that money in that? What is anybody's
Who wants
opinion?
to watch 7 minutes of drama like that on a phone that size when you're commuting? Oh, you're not commuting anymore, are you?
Well, some people have to commit. There's a lot of people who have to keep the.
But don't want to watch Quibi while they commute.
Jeffrey, and then Stuart.
There is one big feature that I'm really hoping that somebody will latch onto, like a TikTok or something like that. And that was the ability when you're watching it in landscape mode, if you flip it to portrait mode, it's supposed to be doing this tracking thing. So it'll put the video in full screen, vertical 9:16, and then it will track to where the person is. If TikTok was to pick up on that, or another service like that, all of a sudden, I have a feeling we'd have a whole bunch of new videos with them doing the tracking.
They've actually been sued on that very issue of having the turny twisty option. Somebody's claimed a patent on that and suing them.
Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
Quibi did own the intellectual property on that device, I think, on that feature, I think, and they were threatening lawsuits. But now, hey, it may be up for sale, that intellectual property.
That worked out.
Lawrence?
Reverse engineer.
Yeah, I don't think it used the tracking. It was edited twice, and it flipped through the edits. So I think that's how they did it. It was no tracking of the framing.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it
but
wasn't
they use
moving it live.
software to do the tracking on it. So.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
so
when
it's
you
the
produce the video, Alex has actually talked about this one because he knows people that were producing videos for Quibi, and when they moved it this way, they had to make the tracks, and I know Premiere Pro can do that with their resize option, and of course I think Final Cut Pro just added all those features to it.
Yeah, a lot of people are working in vertical video, whether the purists like it or not. It's happening out there. And I think the last time I saw metrics on how people watch on their phones, which is I think the dominant platform now, there was just way more vertical than there was horizontal, which is just a change we have to deal with. Stephen Kimbrough.
Yeah, and the people that have that intellectual property live underneath a bridge somewhere, someplace, and that is what they do, and they sue. And I know somebody that tried to license it. They never got a reply back.
Oh, you think this is maybe in the patent troll arena?
I wouldn't say that about these people. They're fine people. They just live under a bridge. I wouldn't say anything bad about them in public.
That's right. I suppose there are other people other than trolls who live under bridges.
And mighty fine bridges is too.
There you go. Okay, so that looks like it covers the Quibi discussion for today. Gabriel Ung of Malaysia says, we had issues with presentation clickers from Logitech when the line of sight between the transmitter and the receiver was blocked. DSAN Perfect Cue is recommended, but is very expensive. Are there any presentation clickers between the Logitech and the DSAN range that you would recommend? Anybody do a lot of presentation work? And nobody? That really surprises me.
I was going to suggest that you maintain a line of sight. Now, if that's an issue where he's ever doing his work, I know it sounds a bit crass, but I'm just thinking, obviously, is there an issue with that he can't overcome?
Are they infrared? So some clickers are RF, some of them are infrared. If they're infrared, I've had success actually with putting a mirror next to something that I had to hit because it's just IR light. But if they're radio, it's different. Courtney? Oh, you're in the teleprompter world. Tell us.
Well, we don't use them for teleprompting, but I used to use them a lot for video playback, controlling laptops and stuff on set. And the problem is most of them are 2.4 gigahertz. The ones that Alex always pushes, the pickle, I can't remember the name of it, the one that they always use, Apple always uses, the big one that has an external antenna. That helps. And the other thing that helps is I would always run a USB, like a 30-foot USB extension, because they usually have a dongle that plugs into the computer, and run that 30-foot extension and put the little dongle up in the air above the talent so there's no place where they could be blocked. And the problem is, in any situation where you have a whole bunch of people in the room, everybody has a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi enabled transmitter on them in their phone. So it becomes so cluttered that the sensitivity of that little dongle receiver without an antenna on it drops precipitously.
I remember the moment I realized, excuse me, I remember that moment I realized in using wireless mics that the receiver did not have to be on the camera, that I could run a long XLR cable from the receiver back to the camera and move the receiver to where the transmitter could easily find it for a clear signal. It was like, oh, why didn't I figure this out 5 years ago? So the same kind of thing there. Go ahead, Lawrence. Lawrence?
Yeah. Sorry about that. I can recommend a brand that's called I think it's pronounced Doosl. It's DOOSL. This one was about $50. The range is exceptional. So I'll show the side here. They have different ones. This is the one I have. And then they have also one that goes up to 1,000 feet. They're affordable and they're very reliable. They beat the major brands.
Nice.
So.
Okay. John Idelson.
We had what we called the human clicker, one of those little small LED flashlights. It pushed it and an operator clicked it. It worked for years without hiccups.
And there's very little latency with visible light, is there?
It worked like a charm. We went through so many different clickers, and I think, as Courtney said, once you get a 2.4 in a room or you got a bunch of USB, it gets pretty messy. So this was our only reliable source.
Excellent. Well, John, your question's up next from Monterey. Anyone using Descript, and there's a link there to descript.com. Do you want to amplify on any of that, any of your question before we?
Well, they just came out with a new release, but this is a tool where you take a transcript and you edit the transcript, and then it edits the video for you. Editors should be scared. And that that I said, it says you could cut out ums and other pauses, and just curious whether anybody's really doing it.
So is that doing AI kind of speech recognition and turning it into text, or?
It must be. I can't imagine they're paying people to transcribe it.
Yeah, sounds something like what Greg and Phil are doing with Intelligent Assistants with their not Lumberjack or Lumberyard, but the other product, which I don't know why
it looks like it's more than it's kind of like a screen, you know, like a full editor, so you can create your videos in there and get the scripts in and out easy.
Yeah, their product is overdubbing. You edit the script and it edits the video. So the video and the script are linked. So as you change one, it changes the other, but this might be different. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I mean, their little video is amazing because they have a part where there's a part of the script. They edit the script in text and the presenter says those things. And, you know, I don't know whether they catch the words. The demo reel looks amazing. And so I just wondered when anybody's using it.
Bruce, you had your finger up. Did you have any experience with it?
I've got a question on that. Is, as an editor, what happens with multiple takes when they say the same things over and over again? And also, we've had some clients who actually go by the script and say, okay, this is the words we want in there because we've transcribed it and delivered it to them. But when you actually hear the words and what they say, it doesn't really match your content. So I think you really need a real live person to monitor that.
I will say, as a narrator, I've faced a million scripts where somebody wrote it for the eye, because there's a difference between writing for the eye and writing for the ear. And I try to say that even as somebody with a lot of experience, and it just doesn't come out making any sense at all. And you really have to rewrite in the moment because that's hard.
On it, they say that you get so many hours of transcription and additional ones are $2 per hour. So it may be that they're actually having a human doing it, but it lets you do overdubs. It just seems pretty amazing, but I'd love to talk to somebody who's trying it.
Courtney?
I was just curious as to how it handles multi-camera shoots where you want to cut from the wide shot to the close-up. How does it know when to make that cut? There must be somebody involved.
I wonder if it's as simple as an algorithm says if this many pixels in a screen changes, that's a cut. I don't know whether...
Well, it wouldn't change. I mean, if you want to cut from a continuous wide shot to, you know, if you've got two cameras set up, a wide shot and a close-up of the same person, you know,
yeah, if it's a neutral
cutting
background.
back and forth between two different people, that makes sense. Off the transcription where Bill says this, then Jane says this, then Bill says this, and you cut back and forth. But if you've got, you know, want to go from the wide shot to the over the shoulder to the close-up, how does it make those choices?
We don't know enough to figure that out, I think. So it may be time to move on to the next question. And that is from Brett Dickus in Kansas City, Missouri. And Brett says, can you do a quick round of panelists identifying their camera type in use today? For example, what camera was Alex using today? And that's impossible to tell because Alex did a quick drop by and he changes depending on what he has out in the field using. I'm on a Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K with a Canon EF lens on it. Anybody else want to raise a hand and describe? Paul Wallace and then Kev. Go ahead, Paul. Whoops, you're double muted, Paul.
Double muted. Okay. All right. Right now I'm on a BCC 950. I've also got a
Who makes that?
20.
Because that BCC 950 is from whom?
Logitech.
Logitech, okay.
And then I have another, that's a C920 now. And then I have another C920. And then I have a Blackmagic ATEM Mini. And that's got 4 camera inputs. Number 1 is a portal. Number 2 is a portal. And 3 is a huddle cam. That's the huddle cam. And then the 4th one is the camera that Guy Cochran uses, which is the new portal, the one that actually lets you do Zoom meetings. So
basically, Paul, you are now a dealer demo room.
Amazon.
I think Paul covered every single camera available now.
Well, I've got a
Jeffrey
Logitech C920, simple, clean, it's 5 years old, still works. And of course, when you download the optional software control, you can move your camera around as you can with the 925s and 930s.
Stuart?
So age doesn't limit.
At the moment, I'm looking at a JVC HD7, which is a old 3-chip, one of the first HD cameras that had an internal hard drive, not an SSD. And if I want to goof around and look across to the vMix machine and find the other mouse, I have a BR250 from High Vision and not High Vision, that one's a Dahua. And then there's Kitty Cat Cam, which is a security camera from High Look / Hike Vision. And I could go through probably another 3 or 4 cameras, but I don't have the Scion set up behind me with an IP out of that.
Is that where the rattling is coming from? I thought somebody's playing the tambourine on somebody's
Yeah, the rattling
feed.
is Smudge just because she's got 2 bells on her collar because she knows how to get rid of the 1 bell.
Cat sounds. All right, accept that. Who else had their hands up? Courtney and then Guy. Guy will have some good feedback on this. Go, Courtney.
This is the M-Cozy or whatever it is with the quasi zoom lens on it. And I also have, I'll have to switch in Zoom. Let's see if this works. I'll switch in Zoom. Hello. Well, maybe not. There.
Yep, there you go.
That is the, that's a Logitech HD 9000, an old, one of their first HD webcams. So you can see them compared. This is very colorful, isn't it? Yeah, compared to the new one.
Yeah, they're different signals entirely. Guy, do you want to chat about this since you have such experience with cameras?
Sure. I'm trying out something kind of new, and apologies if my audio is not dead on because of the playback. I have it set up a little differently, but this is a Panasonic G100. I'll go ahead and cut to that camera. So it's got a nice lens on it. It's an Olympus 12-40 lens. And then for a wide shot here, I've got a Huddle Cam, which is the NDI version. And then I've got that on a remote control. So you can see, I can zoom in with the remote control, or I can do this through NDI. So there's a bird dog over there where the prompter is.
Guy,
so
I think I'm actually jealous of your desk.
Yeah, I think
jealous of my desk.
He's outrigged most of us by a good margin.
Yeah, the prompter, there's the Lumix, and then there's the bird dog, which I can control. If you can see it moving with this joystick. You see it moving over there behind the teleprompter. So, and then the image from that.
The all-seeing eyeball.
Yeah, the eyeball. So I'll call it back to position 2, and then I'll cut to that one. Cut. So then there's that shot, and I can control that with a joystick.
Very artistic shot.
Bird Dog P200. Well, I'm kind of limited on what I can do with this one, but it's crazy because it's a 30x zoom, so you can really, push in super, super tight. All that detail. Anyway, that's my setup.
So you've had a tour of a lot of cameras based on the fact that you've just seen a lot fewer people, but a lot of cameras. So I think everybody's having tremendous amounts of fun with that. Let me change back to gallery view here. And are we content? I hope so. Moving on to John Idelson from Monterey, who's in the panel today. For Guy, is there a shortage of image sensors for web cameras? What does the supply chain look like from your point of view?
Well, I don't think it's just sensors. I think it's a lot of stuff coming out of China, because what happened back when the pandemic kicked in is that there was a stoppage of the factories because everybody was quarantined. And so we're starting to see some stuff come back, but it's like October now, and I'm just now receiving 1,000 ring lights that I ordered back in March. So I mean, that gives you an idea of the time frame of things. So a lot of people are running out of stuff because of activities that happened back in February, because there's a big Chinese New Year that happens, and a lot of the people just didn't come back. So normally they go back to their villages, and then they come back to the city and things fire back up, but it didn't fire up this year. And so we're starting to see the effects of all that. And then because of that, prices drove up. And so some people aren't buying like they used to, because things are twice as expensive or 3 times as expensive, because it's supply and demand. So I don't know if that totally
you're seeing the
answers it,
supply
but yeah,
chains just barely starting to get going again at the level they were
it's
before.
Terrible.
It's
I mean,
still
especially
a
on the
mess.
Logitechs. Yeah, the Brios. I mean, I just stay out of it because it's so just dicey.
Wow. Yeah, I remember in Long Beach and some of the California big ports, that was a big mess in the beginning of the COVID problem with the lockdowns, and they couldn't get the ships offloaded, and that held up supply chains. And then it's got to, of course, get on a rail and everything else and migrate across the western part of the United States. It's been a big problem all the way through. Anybody else want to get in on the web camera discussion? No, then we'll move along to Mike Burns out of Spokane, Washington. Says, I need a recommendation for outdoor surveillance cam. I have 2 Ring doorbells, need to install 2 to 3 more outdoor surveillance cam. Any thoughts? He wants to keep it around $200 to $300. Is that for a couple of them, or is that each? That'd be hard to tell.
So yes, ideally, I'd probably like to get 2 to 3. I already have 2 Rings, but I think one of the things that's jamming me up also is like the storage, the cloud storage, I think, is where these guys are really making their money. But we've had some kind of sketchy things happening around the house over the last several weeks. So I want to get a few more cameras out there, but I'm not very handy. I can't get up on ladders or anything like that. So the easier, the better,
Okay. If you want to spend, it'd probably be outside your budget. I use an Arlo system from Netgear, and I've been adding to it for about 4 or 5 years. We're home all the time, so I don't need it for when I'm gone. We just use it as a monitoring thing, and occasionally if both my wife and I leave the house, which is actually pretty rare these days. But the nice thing about those is that they're totally wireless, so you don't have to drill holes and wire anything, but you pay for that privilege. Let's go around. Let's start with Stuart, then go to Paul Wallace. Stuart, go ahead.
A couple of the cameras that I switched to before were actually Ethernet connected. The high look is the sort of bargain brand for Hikvision. Hikvision and Dahua are companies owned by a pair of brothers that have factories on opposite sides of the same street in Shenzhen, and they don't talk to each other, but they do cross-pollination of hardware. The cameras come out of Hikvision. The DVRs come out of Dahua. The lovely thing about them is amazing night vision. They've got onboard infrared LEDs, and you can switch out the infrared filter, so the night vision looks fantastic. They're available as PoE. They're available as DC powered with Wi-Fi, and they're even available at 4K.
Okay, I want everybody to move real quick. We've still got a bunch of general questions here. We're starting to see questions for our celebrity guest who is here. Hello, Mr. Kerr. It's nice to see you in the panel. Let's finish up as many of these as quick as we can. So
Bill,
try to keep your answers
on me.
super short. Go ahead, Paul, then Victor, and let's just hurry through them.
All right. So the Wyze cameras, they rock. They really do. They're $20 to $25 each on direct from Wyze. They're little cubes. They're flawless. I've had those outdoors. They're not
we got
designed
thumbs
for
up from
outdoors.
Victor's and Courtney, so that looks like a really good solution. So I'd go there first, and then Jeffries has a thumbs down on him. So we have a little mixed review. I'm going to try to get through here. I'm sorry, unless Victor, let's very quickly, one sentence.
Very quickly, Wyze camera outdoor. They just came out. They're back ordered. Go get in on the next order. They've sold 100,000 of them.
Okay, moving on. Mike Burns
What he
spoke.
said, yeah.
Oh, wait a second. That's that question. Let me move over. Gabriel Ung, I think, is in the next position with this question. Is there a slide presentation software that would allow a presenter on stage to see the next slide on their confidence monitors? Presentation computer is normally at the back of the control room. Lawrence, hit it quick.
Keynote will do that. You can set all the slides to any screen that's connected to your laptop. So you can configure that. If you need the connection towards the stage or to the confidence monitor, use one of those wireless solutions. We use the Hollyland. We use the transceiver, and it will work perfectly. That's how I use it.
Great. We're moving on. James Babbitt in San Diego here says, what's the cost of Descript? And does anybody want to explain what Descript is, along with giving us a cost for it? Anybody know it? Are we coming up blank on this panel? That's really an unusual thing. Let me move another question over into the, John Edelson, do you have a quick Descript?
Well, it has a subscription service. There's various levels of it.
You're live.
$24 a month. I just signed up for it. It turns out they have an educational discount. So film at 11. As soon as I get it in running, I'll give a report back to the group.
Great. Tim Turner is in with, has anyone worked with setting up a single or one button classroom studio? I know Extron has equipment for this. Are there other vendors that are available? The budget is limited. Go ahead, Guy.
Oh, wow. I missed the budget limited part. We actually have something called the One Button Studio that we've been working on with the Mimo Live folks with Oliver, and it's everything all in one, the lights, the camera, it's all one thing. Actually, John, you want to give a little?
Yeah, this has been used in a number of institutions, higher ed, where students needed to come in very quickly, do a presentation that they could share with the class. It's called the One Button Studio, developed by educators, and Guy sells the most exciting unit of it. It might seem high price, but when you use it at a university, put it in a library, the cost of manning a system is considerably greater than having the self-serve system that they have that works extremely well based on Mimo Live software with incredible engineering.
Okay, because we have a guest today, I am going to just call it and say that we have, I think, 4 more one-vote questions, but I think everybody would like to get to the heart of the meeting today. So we are pretty excited here to have a guest in the panel. Mr. Graham Kerr is here, one of the most famous television performing chefs who really transformed a lot of what America, I know, and probably a lot of the world sees as fine cooking. So we're very excited to have you here today. And let's have you open your mic and let's just check and see if you're coming in at a correct level.
I think I gave him, I turned his mic on, but
no, he's got a mute there. I think locally we're seeing the red bar across. There you are. That should do it.
Okay.
Welcome.
I love to be unmuted, especially by somebody like Sky Gleason. You know, he's extremely hard to mute. And as a person, I love to get that ripple effect from him. So,
Sky, would you like to talk Graham through trying to lower
place.
the volume just a tiny bit? Because he's coming in pretty hot.
Okay.
Oh, Sky's going to try to, he's going to try to figure that out. So we'll take a moment.
And I will try and count down as I have learned to count down over the years. So
let me push a button.
Oh, he'll do anything in order to be able to get on camera.
So many people have that affliction, don't they? For those of you who might be very young and paid no attention to the last 30 years of American cuisine, television, and cooking.
6, 7,
Mr.
8,
Kerr.
9, 10. Beneath the Southern Cross I stand, a native of my native land, Australia. Good on you, Blue You Butte. That's a little audio check that I used to do, which is a little unfortunate because I'm a Brit and was living in New Zealand. But there we go.
We've got you dialed in.
It still sounds a bit hot.
Yeah, I think you're okay though. You're within the range, and I think everything's going well. So we are all really excited to be able to talk to you today. This is really thrilling. Sky, go ahead.
We're missing Faith Schmidt. Jeffrey, can you allow her into the room?
Okay, we'll do the same quick audio check with her. I was going to say, for those of you who've been living under a rock for 20 years, Mr. Kerr was one of the people who truly brought an elevation of cooking into the American audiences through many years on television as the Galloping Gourmet. He is, I think, probably done as much for popularizing elevated cooking as anybody else on the planet. And we're just thrilled to have you here with us today.
Well,
and there's Faith.
Let me do a quick intro. And I'm very blessed to know this gentleman for many years, and putting all the cards on the table, I'm also blessed to know this woman that just joined us because, well, she's my daughter. So I've kind of known her all her life. More importantly, she's the producer of the T3 experience that we'll be talking about a little later. But I think this would be a great opportunity, Guy, for you to roll that intro of Graham Kerr.
Sky, before we do that, just wait just a second. Can we have Faith unmute and just let's get your level somewhat set to make sure that nothing crazy is going on?
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
Welcome to Office Hours in the Panel. Just talk for about 3 or 4 seconds, whatever you want, and we'll check the audio meters.
Sure. Hi, I'm Faith Schmidt. Graham and I in April started a show called T at 3, where we co-host talking back and forth about pondering and various things.
You're perfect. Everything is fine. Go ahead, Sky. You can run your video.
Guy Cochran.
Go ahead, give me a spotlight if you would, Stuart. Here comes the video.
One of the most successful cooking shows on television.
Graham Kerr is the father of food television as pure entertainment.
You ready?
Oh my God, it's like Graham. It's that kind of vibe. Because Graham would run through the audience and he had such energy.
It caught fire.
The audience at home felt like I felt that we were all in this together.
Americans viewed him as this pop culture caricature of, is the word
Like-
Sibray?
Sure,
Yeah, it's a word. Yeah, I think that's it.
Whereas Julia was playing for the camera, Graham Kerr was playing for a crowd. And that changed everything.
We will rewrite the way that we do food in this country.
He was literally at the top of his world. And then suddenly you stopped hearing about him. What happened? What happened that made him suddenly disappear?
I have now taken what I worked for 16 years in terms of staff and money and prestige and all the rest of it, and I have just dumped that. I dumped it on the basis of, I think, hearing God tell me, give them the money and follow me, and nothing more. So I'm just now in the business of saying, okay, I took all of what I had and I put it over here. Now I'm here to follow you. Where do we go?
Beautiful. Sky, do you want to, there's another video I know. Are you thinking about that inserting here? Do you want to start the discussion?
We'll hold on that video, but I guess I would like, in driving from Edmonds to Warm Beach where Graham lives, realizing you in office hours have become my friends. And Graham Kerr is how I was introduced, because I wanted to learn how to be a better producer from his wife that produced all 1,800 of his episodes. But she said, oh my goodness, no. And I said, well, then could we be friends? And Graham looked and said, but of course. So my friends at office hours, I would like to introduce my friend, Graham Kerr.
Good. So here I am, and I understand that you have a barrage of potential questions, which I'm longing to be able to get to.
Well,
But
this
if
is
I
actually a
could
unique thing because, yes, we drove mostly by questions, but we have some in. I think we need far more. This is a unique opportunity for people to see and talk to and ask questions of somebody who has been intimately involved in how television grew and formed and really drove a lot of what we see now. And now that we're all migrating into web-based stuff, this is a unique opportunity. So go ahead and ask questions, and then we'll break in when we need to. Mr. Kerr, up to you.
If I could just Faith and I have been doing this one thing for 22 months now on YouTube, the tier 3 thing. And we have a very specific reason for doing that. We just want to be two real people separated by 60 years of life. I'm 86 and Faith, if I may, Faith is 26. And she sees the future in a different way than I do, clearly. We just want to ponder how both of us can invest our daily lives in a better, more sustainable future for our planet. And so we have that deep down inside, and we're just simply looking every single episode. What can we do? Does it make sense? We have a knee-jerk reaction. Well, I couldn't do that. Then we ponder it for a week and come back. And with our audience, having pondered it for a week, possibly, like going vegetarian, for example. And at the end of the week, we're different people than we were when we started to ponder it. And we just think that if the media is going to work these days, we're going to have to be less knee-jerking and more pondering people. And we just want to be able to show what that looks like with an old guy and a young girl talking about that together in real terms. So that's what we're up to.
Fabulous. That's fabulous. Faith, why don't you tell us a little bit about your perspective in this? Let's get both sides of the equation.
Yeah, so this kind of came about as I was brought on for some tech stuff, just like helping with the YouTube side. And then through conversations between Graham and I, we decided to do this thing together. And so one of us will bring up a topic and then we'll think about it for a week. And the difference between my perspective looking into the future and his perspective looking at the past and also into the future, it's just, they're wildly different, but we can find ways to come together. And that's not something that, like, I don't usually talk to a bunch of 86-year-old men. So it's a really, like, it's a different experience, but it's a really interesting way of like coming together and seeing those different perspectives on life.
Could you give us an example of an early topic where you two approached the same subject from way different perspectives? Graham, do you have?
I think perhaps the vegetarian idea would be one, because that was very far from my thoughts. You know, I've spent my life with food, and clearly I had decided, I had flirted with being vegetarian at one stage. It lasted for about 3 days. And when I heard Faith talking about it being just a smidgen of a lifestyle habit on her behalf that could result in lessening the effect of climate change that we're watching nowadays. And I've been very interested in the climate change issue personally. And I have an electric car, for example, and I work all kinds of things in that, but I hadn't thought of the idea of steering away from meat, particularly beef. And so I knee-jerked. Well, bless your heart, that's somewhere I don't think I can go. But pondering it for a week, all week, thinking about that, I came back the next week and I decided that I was going to change. It made sense I could do less harm as a result of that. And that's changed my life. And so I saved about $30 a month by going vegetarian, and I was able to transfer that to Albania, which is a place that I'm deeply concerned for, and was able to make sure that that money went to a better purpose. I like to share out of my life with people who have needs, and that's the way I chose to do it.
Faith, and then I'm going to have Sky drive this, but Faith, from your side, I'm interested in that same question. How did it feel to be able to have an effect? I'm assuming that you were part of that conversation about vegetarianism. How did it feel to have an effect on Graham?
Oh, it's an amazing experience, because I don't ever feel like I have I'm not coming into this feeling like I'm going to change something. I'm just coming into this to share my honest experience. And the fact that two people can come together and share their own personal honest experiences, and then some change comes out of that is pretty wild.
I bet it is. Sky, you wanna pop in and drive some of these?
I would love to actually share the video. I think would be a good example of what we're talking about. And I need to go close Graham's door because I'm getting feedback.
Okay, Guy,
whenever you're ready, I'll go ahead and roll it in.
Let's go.
So, as you can see, there are 2 slices of cake here. I must tell you that I made this cake the other day and I was very thrilled with it. In fact, I was so thrilled with it that I found myself eating this size of slice. And I thought to myself, I can't keep on doing that. So I moved to this slice here, which, as you can see, is about 1/3 of the value. And by taking this one up and actually savoring each bite, I was completely satisfied with that small slice. I think this has also got something to do with life. If we're really invested in our life that we have and something beautiful happens, like the sun just came out this moment and lit up the little tree that I planted for Trina. It's just flat out gorgeous out there. At that moment, if we can absorb that great blessing that we have at that moment, then there's something which is satisfying about our life.
I really like your point, specifically, almost not as a metaphor, but specifically with the cake. Because I find myself like when I'm craving treats, I'll like go get a treat and I'll eat it while I'm doing something else, like while I'm watching a movie or something. And then I won't even think about the treat at all. I'll just have consumed it and it'll be it. That'll have been like, I wanted a treat, I got a treat, I ate the treat, and I'm not even thinking about it. But if you're actually like, and then of course 10 minutes later I want another one, so I go up and get another one. But if you're actually like sitting down and thinking about that treat as a treat and savoring that moment, I feel like that's you're so much more satisfied by that than just like consuming it while being busy with other things. I like that.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
That makes a lot of sense. I imagine a lot of people are facing such massive amounts of stress in life with everything that's going on in the outside world, that stress eating is probably epidemic out there. And so the fact that you're addressing things like that is very cool. Do we have more content we want to go through, or should we start into the questions?
I think the opportunity of sharing is what Zoom has allowed us to do. Early in my working with people, Zoom was the technical way that we continue to be human to each other, and that Faith and Graham have only ever met once, but they now have a deep and intimate relationship with. They've shared souls. Graham's wife that has passed, that he can ask deep questions. Faith is learning from somebody that has gone before him, and it's been this office hours has allowed me to help others listen as well as share. So I think the questions are a great opportunity, and Sky'll shut up.
Well, that's interesting because, one of the things about Zoom is that people famously said everybody's a broadcaster now, but this is moving a new level of content and quality in there. So we're starting to see that important, good content that makes sense for people in their lives is really what's going to drive the success of these things. And so this may be the beginning of that. We are, and I'm not at all surprised, and I think we need to address it. Graham, you have such an amazing history of this. We are getting some questions about what you did in the early decades of your life. So we'll be back and forth all these topics, but I just wanted, James Babbitt is in from here in San Diego with, hi Graham, was the Galloping Gourmet on the Mike Douglas show and the Merv Griffin show as well as on other shows? How much reach did you have in the prime years that you were doing your show?
Well, I think I was one of those guests who get to go on those shows. I think I made it to just about every talk show that there was. I was an oddity, let's face it. My accent for a start, the fact that I was living at that time in Australia and had lived in New Zealand, and that I suddenly burst onto the scene by jumping over a chair with a glass of wine. I must tell you that that was not my idea. I didn't think that I would gain the approval of my peers by doing that. And I said, you know, what would Julia Child think? And my wife, Trina, who's producer, said, I don't really think Julia Child is going to be a large part of your audience. You just, yeah, I want you to break yourself down to a level in which you are genuinely communicating and entertaining, because television, it may be a wonderful information method, but if it doesn't reach that threshold of entertainment, it is going nowhere. So if you want to teach, jump the chair.
Great advice. What a fabulous piece of advice. And it cuts across all mediums of communication. You're walking into a boardroom, meeting somebody for the first time in a social situation. Stuart, you have a question? Let's involve as many people as we can.
No, just more a thanks. As the token Aussie in the panel, hearing the correct accent through the sound check was absolutely fabulous.
And in point of fact, Brent Ramsey from Melbourne says, do you have any memories of your time in Australia? And what are the names Harry M. Miller and Glad Rap? Do they ring any bells?
Oh, my goodness me. Good old Harry. Harry was my manager or entrepreneur, whichever way you like to put it. And he, up to that time, had been sort of an impresario. He would brought the classic pianists and opera singers, etc., to Australia, and then went under the desk, so to speak, and found me. He was remarkable. I came from a non-commercial environment in New Zealand. I started in New Zealand when there was only 50 television sets in the whole country. Thank you, Sky. And the result of that was that that I succeeded in spite of myself. So Harry Miller saw this and thought, I can make some money out of this guy. I think that was his real idea, and he did. And in the end, I came from non-commercial to commercial in a big leap to Australia. And I didn't really like it. I thought the commercials were a bit odious, frankly. I didn't understand that they just made the whole thing work. And I didn't fit in easily. In the end, we've had to part company just as the world opened up through the Galloping Gourmet series, which was, but I look back upon Harry with great deal of affection and a certain amount of, it was difficult, but you still can't do much else but be thankful for people who go out on a limb for you.
Since you've had that much experience and you remember those early days, is there advice you're giving Faith as she comes into this? and Faith, what are the lessons that Graham has passed on to you that have been most valuable for you?
I think the biggest aspect for sure is just the enthusiasm and willingness. Like, he just kept pushing. He's like, no, I want you to be on this with me. I want to be talking to you. I want you to be on the screen with me. And he's like coming to this experience. Like, I want you to come with me to be on this show. So just like being willing to grasp at that opportunity and be excited about it. Jump right in.
Did you have a stage fright issue? Are you comfortable in the online communications model? I mean, most people in your age group and younger kind of have lived through this. Was it comfortable? Or was it a leap to open up your camera and speak?
I think that, well, I've done probably more behind the camera stuff before this. So I think it's awkward for anyone, no matter what age, to just sit in an empty room and stare and talk to a camera. But it's been nice to have him on the other side to have that interaction and be able to communicate that way.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, TJ Asser has a question in here. What do you think of the trend where cooking shows are now all about competition and winning and conflict? The Great British Baking Show being the rare gentlemanly exception to that when it comes to competition. What did you feel, Graham, about things like the Iron Chef coming through and all that? You're going to win and somebody else is?
Well, I was asked to go to Japan and head up the first of the Iron Chef. I think it was the Iron Chef that was the first leader, and they wanted me to be the judge on that program. And I turned that down. I turned that down. I went to a Rudolf Steiner school in England in my youth. Straight from a British boarding school to that Rudolf Steiner. Now, you need to know that a Rudolf Steiner school has no competition. There are no marks. You take no exams. If you play games, you don't score. It's so absolute opposite than competition. I thrived in that environment and continue to do so. Do I think that competition is poor? No, I think it's really essential in our modern world. I would just like to avoid it like the plague.
Well said. All right. The next one comes from Stephen Kimbrough, who's here in the panel from Berkeley. What have you brought to the new show from the old? And more importantly, what have you put on the shelf from the way you used to do things?
Well, let me say, first of all, before Faith, this is the first time in my life that I have shared a screen with somebody else. Right from day one in 1960, I have been solitary. And as been quoted, about 1,800 different opportunities to share personally. So I'm really well practiced at the idea of looking into a camera and treating it like my friend. And behind the camera, I would have crew, like all of you guys today. You're amongst my best friends that I still have from all that way back. Trina just loved the crew, and the crew loved Trina and took me on as a sideline. It was special. So what I'm doing in shelving is shelving this isolated business of looking into the cameras I'm doing at the moment, and being really concerned for a young woman who's really passionate about a better future for our world. I know I'm going to go soon, but she's going to live through what we are now choosing to do with our world. And I just love to listen to her, and I love the sparkle and the freshness of her. As we say, we don't live in the same area at all. We only have this relationship through Zoom. And therefore, I think Zoom is the next, well, I think it's the Gutenberg press of our time. I think the press changed everything. And I think Zoom is going to change everything as well. And I think we're going to enter into a better form, a deeper form, and a more understanding form of one another through this mechanism than we do even face to face.
Faith, I'm interested in, when you started doing this, what did your friends talk to you about this opportunity or this a chance to communicate to more people? Was there conversations that took place when you told them what you were going to be doing?
Well, most of them first were like, who? Who's grandparent?
Everybody of a certain age here relates to
love,
that.
that happened so long before 86. I trust you.
No, I think that, I mean, it's still awkward to say that I am like my job is on YouTube right now. I don't know, maybe like 10 years younger than me, no one would blink at that, but it's still a little bit on the edge of being like, you're doing what? Like, what is this? And I don't know if really any of my friends even watch, actually.
Interesting. let's move on to the next question then. Dan Huber of Erie, Pennsylvania says, Graham, what inspired you to make full use of the technology at that time in television?
Well, do you know, again, two things. One, Trina's advice was, if you want to inform, train, teach, share your life with other people, you must entertain first. That's the threshold. And the second thing was, never watch your program back. Never watch what you have done. If you do that, you will play a kind of video in the back of your mind of the things that you like that you do, and you will try and edit out the things that you don't like. And in the end, you'll become an edited person. And I want you to be real. I don't want you to wear makeup. I want, if your hair is a mess, then it's a mess. I just want you to be real. And, you know, I see that today, and we have so engineered the presentation technique that I think it's losing something of the immediacy that you just saw in Faith. Faith just said, I don't know if my friends watch the program. Oh, how I value the reality of that statement. That's amazing and wonderful. And that's how she goes. I am literally walking out on thin ice every week as we do this program together, but not afraid of falling through it. I just know it's a tender surface and that we're going to talk truth. And I think nowadays, if there's any search for anything that we're looking for, it's let me find a source of people who are being real.
That is refreshing to hear in this world where even the young people obsess for long periods of time over a photo before it goes on Instagram, and they feel like it has to be perfect. That message, I think, relieves a ton of human beings out there from this idea that you have to be something that's near magically perfect or it's not worth anything, because that's not how the
celebrating authenticity.
Amen.
That's what it's about. It's being real for the real people.
Mike Burns has another question here. Curious to know if network practices and standards ever gave you grief for drinking wine on air.
Yes, of course. No, nobody told me I shouldn't, but the Temperance Society of Halifax, Nova Scotia, wrote to me and told me that I was seriously impacting the health of my viewers, and if I had any love for them at all, I should stop drinking. And I wrote back and I said, you know, thank you for your advice, but frankly, I don't think that my viewers have that kind of, that they're going to be inspired by me to drink or not. I don't see that. Of course, that's what I responded at the time. I have since actually not. I don't drink anymore. Largely, I think, because I found out that there's about 17 million homes in the United States where alcohol is a serious problem, and that by simply sipping it and enjoying it, I was really putting a temptation in people's way. There's an old script which says, do nothing whereby your brother stumbles, is offended, or made weak. And I think that I was doing that, so it had to go.
I read something online about you as I found out that you were going to be here today. And I guess, did you used to have a sip of wine as you were cutting away to commercials, and then you would come back doing the same thing? And I think people thought that you were imbibing the entire commercial break.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is so true. Our technique was, because BBC, you know, the program actually went around the world. And so there were many places where, a few places, which didn't have commercial breaks. So rather than saying, I'll be back in a minute, and those kind of time-honored, you know, pauses, we would have me take the glass of wine and I'd say, time for a short sip. And so slurp, I think is what I've called it. So I would then drink, and we would cut on the edit for the commercial break, and the come back from the commercial break was the glass going down on the counter and then back up to me again. So that was our technique. So there were 4 commercial breaks. So people were tuning in and says, "Is this the day he falls into his souffle smashed?"
How hysterical.
I was called the Dean Martin in the kitchen at that stage.
Nice. Jeffrey Powers has a question from the panel. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So, honor you're here. Thank you guys. Thank you both for showing up. I'm going back to that keep it real part that you were talking about, and show preparation. How would you, even on your worst days where you just didn't want to do the show, did you have like a mantra, or did you have some way to boost yourself up so you could keep it real, or was it just all the wine?
No, and it couldn't be all the wine. There were about 4 sips in the program. I'd probably put 1.5 ounces of alcohol into myself, of wine into myself in a program. And I used to stand outside the door. I used to run in through a tunnel. And as I did that, I would put my hands together and almost touch so that I could put a cigarette paper between the two and see whether my hands were shaking or not. They had to be completely still. Then I would drop my hands down and the signature tune would start, and I'd have to burst through the door and grab that glass of wine and shake people's hands. We had 380 people in the audience, and then bow and then turn and then jump the chair and then land, and we had saran wrap over the top of the glass so that the wine wouldn't go everywhere. And then turn into the camera, and I then had to tell a joke. It's easy to get recipes. It's much harder to get jokes that you can tell, which must last about 4 minutes. So they were always shaggy dog stories in some fashion. And that was, so I can't tell you that I used to have to do 195 new shows a year, right? And I put 9 hours of development into each program. So you'll get some idea. We just didn't have a life other than that which we had.
I've got to ask the question, did you ever miss the chair leap?
Do you know? No, but at one stage, Trina put 2 chairs there instead of 1 to see how I would negotiate it. And I nearly tripped on the second one and fell on my face. So they decided not to do that. Then one day there was 3, so I stood up on them and walked across the top. But no, do you know, I just don't know how we did it. We did 3 shows back to back with the same audience in a night, and we did 65 shows in 6 weeks. And then out into the world and travel around the world to pick up the dishes and film on location and do the testing and development and come back into the studio again. It was just hugely impossible.
I'm gonna throw in that each episode took what, a minimum of 19 hours of research, development, prep, test, and so, and each show was only what, how long? 30 minutes?
Yeah, well, 23, 23:40, I think it was.
and you would film how many a day?
We did 3 on a Tuesday, 2 on a Monday, 3, 2, 3, and that was it. Each week, Saturday, Sunday off, and then back in the studio again. Yeah.
Brian here on the panel wants to,
you mentioned about Velcro. This is a fun, quick note before you go to the question, Bill. the Velcro. Talk about Velcro, sir.
But our cameras, I forget what they were called nowadays. Forgive me for that. But we did have Velcro on the side of the cameras, so that there was an army mess tin with a Velcro on the bottom, and a knife and a fork which were attached. And that was on the side of every camera, so that our camera team would be the first one in on the dish after the credits rolled. And the end of the episode, the food was wiped clean out of the pots by the crew, which they got first.
That's lovely.
First
Brian
look at
Anderson
it.
here in the panel has a question. Brian?
Mr. Kerr, honor to
Hi.
have you here. I grew up in Western Canada, just outside Edmonton, and with Canadian content laws and all that, I grew up watching the Galloping Gourmet. You mentioned the vignettes that were shot on location in different countries and so on, and that I want to know more about that. But I first of all want to say thanks for those, because as a kid in a little farming town, that helped me to see the world. I did not, it was a very small place, and not just those little vignettes, but then even the food. I experienced food watching you take that bite and rolling your eyes back in your head. That for me vicariously let me go, oh, there's a whole world of stuff that I can't experience here because of where I live, but the day is going to come that I did. And thanks to you, I got the girl. I became a foodie, as my wife calls me, and dating was part of cooking for her, and it all came from that experience of vicariously, living through the cooking you were doing. But could you talk a little bit about those vignettes where you looked at one last night in the Bahamas, at Eleuthera, and other places?
Yeah, that's wonderful. It actually, those little vignettes were so important to the whole thing, because I was doing this show in New Zealand, just simply going into the studio and looking into the camera, and that was it. And it wasn't until I was given, the Qantas Airlines in Australia had the inauguration flight of their round the world service. And they invited a wine writer called Len Evans and myself to go on that inaugural flight, in a manner of speaking, to literally offload at each airport around the world and visit however many restaurants we liked and write a book about that experience. And we call that the Galloping Gourmets, plural. But you see, when we were going round, it occurred to me, oh, this is so amazing. If we had a camera, we could actually shoot what we're experiencing. And so I came back and suggested this and went off with a Canon Scoopik, 16 mils Canon Scoopik, and did my own filming around the world, first of all. There was a wonderful cameraman called Stefan Sargent, and he taught me to use the Canon Scoopik, and we had little battery lights and things, and we'd squint away at different chefs around the world. In the end, we had our own crew and traveled with our own crew. And it's been an amazing experience, because we would go to the travel department of a government, say in France, and we tell them, I would give them the names of the dishes I wanted to do research on, and ask for the place where they knew it was done the best. And then we went to that place, and that place rolled the red carpet out for us, because we had an international audience, and this was great PR. So we got every single thing. We used to do 8 different vignettes a day in Paris, for example. In one case, dressing up as a dauphine in old ancestral costume and going through their metro system on film. We did all kinds of strange things, including going to Moscow. We were the second Pan Am flight into Moscow back in the early 70s. And that was an amazing experience too. We started out with a team of 2, which they gave us. And then after we wound up with 27 on the crew altogether. And one of those life-changing experiences that we had.
Without pulling the curtain back too much, I have to ask, you're going into these fabulous restaurants, you're sitting down, you're having 8-10 meals. How did you not balloon to 300 pounds in the first year that you did this?
Can I? And they didn't call me galloping for nothing. I was always on the trot, at least. So I think, and burning a tremendous amount of energy. I don't think you can go in front of a large audience and cook something without a single edit. We never, in 490 episodes, there was not a single, well, that's not true. I did have a pot blow up on me once, and I had to be sort of dabbed down with an anti-burn solution and then carried on. But apart from that, we never edited. Whatever was happening, we had to just simply go through it. In other words, it was real. It was real television. Yeah.
Rachel Ann Clifton's in with a question about the mechanics behind the scenes. Graham, do you have any recollection of your first sponsor, and how difficult was it to find sponsors that complemented your on-camera persona?
Oh, dear Lord. My first sponsor was the 101 Ringer Mop. And this was in Sydney, Australia. And I remember that they had the sponsor up in the green room, separated from the studio. And so I stood there looking at this mop, and I was about to be violated. Remember, I was a non-commercial person. And I said, "Why do you call it the 101 Ringer Mop?" And this disembodied voice came back, "That's because there's over 101 things you can do with it." And I said, "Well, if you'll step down on the studio floor, I'll show you the 102nd. And that was the end of that sponsor. So we then got Nestle company, Maggi, and they wanted me to hold this aluminum packaged soup mix and do a commercial for it. And I said, "What do you want me to say?" He said, "It doesn't matter, mate. Just hold the package and tell us what the name is. We don't mind. You can do whatever you like." So that was my start with the way I did commercials. From that time on, it was understood that I would do whatever I chose to do with whatever product was being brought to me. And I would do that ad lib. And I would do 12 cuts in a row. I was very disciplined at coming out on time. So I would have an idea about what I was going to do, but there were no words. And then of the 12 takes, we would then sit down with the advertising agency and the sponsor and decide which of those 12 we would use as on-air commercials.
Fabulous. There's a question from Tim Turner I think is interesting. Graham, you have learned, what have you learned from this experience that you wish you had known in your 30s? And Faith, what meaningful life lessons have you learned from Graham that has changed a perspective in your life?
Well, I should let Faith go first. I'm feeling, and do you know, I am so aware now of her being my co-host that I begin to start to shrink a bit when I'm talking too much about myself. And I've had to learn that over the periods of, and I'm eager to know what Faith is going to say about this.
I'm just impressed you're making any changes being in the general same age category. It's hard after that much time doing something. Faith, what do you think? What life lessons have come to you?
Yeah, I think by far the biggest thing that I've learned from this process is to just sit and ponder and think more deeply about the things going on. I think I have a tendency to kind of put my head in the sand when I'm overwhelmed by everything that like feels a little bit hopeless in the world. And Graham is very methodical on like, let's sit down, let's think about this for a week. Like we have a whole week. You don't have to like be overwhelmed in 1 hour, like thinking about everything that's going on in the world. You can take it little bits at a time, and being able to take these big concepts, little pieces at a time, makes them so much more tangible. And it's just, it's a way to get into that deeper thinking that now with enough practice over 23 episodes, it feels like that's kind of a part of my life that wasn't really there before.
That sounds pretty timeless to me. Graham, do you want to amplify any of that on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've learned is to take a broader view than just my knee-jerk reaction. I'm just like everybody else. The news is the Colosseum of our time. That's where we get people butchered in public. And if it bleeds, it leads. And I'm so fed up with it. I truly am. and I'm fed up with influencers as well who are into selling me the Gucci bag. I just want to hear people begin to start to talk like Faith does. She said the other day, I love to hike, and I was going out through the larch bushes of Montana where she lives. And she said, I was with a very good friend and we were having a wonderful conversation, but my eyes were down and I was looking at the dirt. That's what I do when I'm walking. I look at the dirt. But then I thought to myself, because we were pondering, looking for something remarkable, that I'll look up and see the larch trees and the blue sky through the larch trees. So, oh, come on, there's more to life than what we see on the screen, and we should bring to the screen what we see in life. And I'm just, do you know, I was an innovator in my time. When Trina said jump the chair, I did. And I'm glad I did, because nobody else was jumping chairs or has done. And yeah, that I did some other stuff in between.
Graham,
But
hi,
right
it's
now,
David from Nottingham in England. I'm
right
dying
now,
to ask
if
a
I may,
question.
if I may to answer the question, I just love the idea of not always looking at the dirt and looking for something remarkable beyond that. And I think we need in the media to do that nowadays.
Well said. Kev, you had a point you wanted to make?
Yeah, I was just simply say, first and foremost, great to see you, Graham. It's lovely to see you and hear from you. Watched you many afternoons coming back from school back in England here, so very familiar to me. One of the questions that always made me wonder about your show was, did the audience actually know? I mean, obviously they did once the shows got started, but when you did your first set of shows and you were leaping into the audience and literally going past the cameras, and of course that had never been seen before. So, but you are a pioneer, and they still use all the techniques to this day in programs for cooking today. So what was the reaction from your first set of audiences when you literally leapt into their laps?
Well, you know, and I can give a lot of credit to Canada and to the city of Ottawa, which is where I lived at the time. And we got our audience from the Ottawa constituency, where there is a lot of international people, because of course it's the ambassadorial staff and everything else. And the word got out through the ambassadorial staffs, if you will, and they started to come. So we had a very international audience from day one. And they were not used to being an audience for an international program. I think that we were the first in Canada to fit that bill. And so they seem to love it. This sounds a bit prideful, but we used to put the tickets on sale, not sale, but to get the tickets was once a year. And we did 3 seasons each year of 65 shows. And those sold out virtually within 5 days of them being announced. So we had a full audience always, regardless of whether there were snowstorms as well. So I got to know those people in the sense they came back, several of them came back again and again. But there was such a familiarity that I had with them and them with me, that I think we became family in a sense. And there was a sort of expectation of the extraordinary to take place, because I rehearsed every one of those programs in the afternoon and then went back and did these in the evening. So I was familiar with everything that I had to do within that, enough to be able to, Trina would build in about 4 minutes for me to have freedom to move, as she puts it. You can, you have to fill in every second. And just no dead space, Graham, just fill it in.
You know, that
And
leads
you did
beautifully to
beautifully.
Ranjan Sadwell's question. How was it like working with your wife as a producer? How did you settle creative disagreements to maximize the best story when you're working with somebody you're that close to?
This is dead space, which I'm learning through faith to have, because I'm so used to keeping on talking. And there needs to be questions sometimes asked where you don't have this immediate way of answering it. I did what she suggested because she had the very best of intentions for the program. Not necessarily for me, but she knew that there was an entity, that program existed and had to be viable, every one of them. She would rate me at the end of every program from an A+ to a C. And if it was a C, we would have to consider doing it again because it didn't reach her parameters. So I actually performed for my wife. That's true. And you need just to know, without me groveling, because I don't wish to grovel in public, but I've been a thoroughly unpleasant person in my early days in Australia. I just lost it completely. A sudden deluge of money and celebrity and everything else took me out of my normal self and poked me into a place where I had no character in order to avoid it. So she was having a great deal of difficulty forgiving me for that period. And I was so wanting to be forgiven that, to a degree, my performance was to please her and to gain a little bit of respect from her for what she didn't have. Later on in life,
pleased her and millions of others too.
Okay. Well, you know, later on in life, she did have the tools to forgive me, and I'm the most amazing man looking back about this amazing woman whom I love with all my heart.
That's fabulous. Ranjan popped into the question.
I'm gonna jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Sky.
I do need Graham to. When were you first on television? And you can lose this later, Bill. When was you the first time you were on television?
My first time on television was in August of 1960, and I was commanded to go on by the Air Force. I was the chief catering advisor to the Air Force in New Zealand. And I said, what television? We don't have television. It says it starts next week. So I went on and made an omelet on that program. And it was a frightening experience, but I was used to cooking in public because that's my upbringing in the hotel business. And so I had done that in the past. And it was actually written up as the best live show to date, which was not a surprise because with 50 television sets in the whole country, you know, and I really was in the beginning extraordinary.
Ranjan asked, who's your favorite on-camera chef now that you secretly watch? Does anybody out there excite you?
And don't get me wrong by anything I'm saying now, but please. I haven't had television in my home for 32 years.
Wow.
So I have not watched one of them, and neither have I ever watched a complete program of anybody at all. I did do a couple of shows with Julia Child, and I did watch a little parts of segments of that. And I love that lady, and we loved each other. I think that's true to say, even though we were going in diametrically opposite directions with her butter and my change that I had to make in my life because my wife Trina had a stroke and a heart attack and diabetes and hypertension. And I loved her, so I actually pulled a U-turn in order to be able to care for her, and then did 1,000 TV shows with that change direction.
Graham, can you amplify that a little more? Because we did have a question that came in from James Babbitt. How does your cooking style change over the years? And is this part of it, the nutritional, looking at the nutritional and how healthy the food is for people?
Yeah, you know, if you look at our life at the present moment with COVID, you'll understand that we in the United States have more COVID deaths than anyone else in the world, even by percentage. I think there's one group that are ahead of us, but it's a very small area. We have an underlying health issues, which Trina had: diabetes, hypertension, heart disease in the family, etc. And we really don't treat those very well. We're very good at treating people in a very expensive way, but for the average person in the United States, our healthcare system is broken. And because of that, we've had the kind of COVID experience that we have, and we've got to change those. So I changed my life, and therefore I think that I'm entitled to be able to say, I made a change and this is how I did it. Because I was called the high priest of hedonism in the press, and I pulled this U-turn into a more natural, more plant-based environment of low in fats and high in complex carbohydrates. And it worked so much for Trina and myself. We had 28 years from her stroke and heart attack till the day she died of an unrelated issue of sepsis in a hospital. So I know that lifestyle change can work. And the question was I prepared to dump my career and reputation in order to go for it? And I didn't have a choice. It was obvious. I could not continue to do what had actually contributed to her ill health. And I did have to show what was contributing to her better health. So I did that, and I'm so glad I got that opportunity.
I'm noting it's the top of the hour, but I don't think anybody wants to stop, so we're going to keep going for a while. We have a plethora of questions here, and a lot of people, questions and comments, and people just want to show you a little love here for all that you've done for them over. I want to do this one next. Graham, do you have a favorite spice combination? And if so, why?
Oh, wow. And I'm like, have to dive into this one. I went round the world on the QE2 doing a series called The Gathering Place, which we shot in Canada, in Toronto. And every place I went to the market and went to the herb and spice sellers in that market. And I said to them, which are the 5 top herbs and spices that you sell to your public here? And they would tell me, and then I would get those 5 spices from them, and I would take those back in one sealed Ziploc bag, and then I would just jostle those 5 together so as to get a flavor of that part of the world. And of all of the combinations that I think that I loved the most was in Italy, and in the southern part of Italy, in the Naples region of Italy. And I'm trying to think of what they were now. And there was certainly oregano. There was certainly what grows when a woman is in charge of a I'm having an 86-year-old gap in my
doesn't matter
so
at
rosemary,
all.
Rosemary.
Rosemary.
If rosemary grows around your house, then the woman is in charge. That's an old myth. I went around trying to kill all the rosemary around our house. There's a little thyme, a little basil as well. That Spanish, that Italian seasoning is to me the most vigorous and most identifiable with a region in the world.
That's awesome. Leland Best, who's often on the panel here, wanted to know who or what were some of your biggest influences in the culinary world? You mentioned the incomparable Julia Child. Who else do you resonate with, and who influenced you?
Chef Silvano Trompetto at the Savoy Hotel in London. An elegant gentleman with a tallest white hat you have ever seen, and an imperious attitude. He and I became truly best friends. It was wonderful. And the second one is Carl Guggenmoss. And Carl Guggenmoss was dean of the University of Johnson & Wales culinary department, the largest food school in the world, and food university in the world. And he and I are still the best of friends in what we do. Very creative, interesting people. Yeah, with lots of life in them. Yeah.
Renjan out of Los Angeles says, when is the next time you'll be cooking on camera? Hopefully a new vegetarian dish. And will Faith be cooking with you? And Faith, pop in on this as well. Go ahead.
I think that's something fun about being like doing the show with Graham is that even though it's unrelated to cooking, every so often he'll use a cooking metaphor or just like casually breeze through some like new cooking method. I'm like, oh yeah, tips. I'm like writing it down.
And if we got into the business of being typecast, then we would be skewing in order to somehow attract an audience. This is going to sound silly to all of you, but we are not numbers orientated, either of us, or Sky for that matter. Sky understands the business of numbers, but we are not actually primarily doing what we do for numbers. And that comes out of my past because Trina could care less about numbers. We were told once we had 200 million viewers worldwide. And she says, I don't care how many damn viewers we've got a script conference at 9. And that was my darling, you know. So, and I went around kicking the furniture because I thought, hey, it's got to be about numbers. But it really isn't. Numbers, it's just like politics. It's like votes. And I want to live with Faith as my neighbor who lives 200 or 300 miles, 400 miles away from me. I don't see her from day to day, but I do on Zoom. And I'm of the opinion that we are on the cusp of something absolutely revolutionary as far as our world is concerned. I think we're going to grow closer together as international people, protecting our world from exponential entropy. I think we are destroying the world on an exponential basis. It's not supposed to die off like this, but we will snuff it out if we don't pay some attention to the people we care about.
Speaking of human connection, I'm going to do this one. Paul Shadwell said, I remember watching the Galloping Gourmet in the 70s in the UK with my mom and sisters. I just wanted to have the opportunity to say thank you for entertaining us. And I'm asking this for a lot of people who would ask this same question had they been wise enough to put it in the queue. My mom will be thrilled to know you are still around. She's 85. Could you say hello to Audrey Shadwell?
Oh, Audrey, hi. It's Graham. And I just can't be more thrilled to know that we're almost the same age. I'm just a bit older than you are, but hasn't it been a wonderful life? And there's still so much more to engage. So bless your heart. I'm so glad to have been a part of your life.
That is fabulous. Before we finish up here, I want to find out, what are you doing next? Where can people watch something? You guys are working on a show. Can you tell us how they can keep this connection that you've established with new sets of people today? Talk a little about what's next, Graham.
Okay, Faith. Quickly, my darling, because I call her darling, by the way, and I've been told not to do that, but I can't stop it. It's just British.
I call everybody darling. It's because you can't remember the name.
It's only important if she tells you not to.
Go ahead, Faith. Tell us what's happening next.
Yeah, we are just finishing up season 2 of T3. It is on YouTube. I think it's youtube.com/c/T3 might get you there. If you Google T3 with Graham Kerr, that'll get you there. We're about to do our last episode this week. of season 2, and then there'll be a little bit of a break, and we might we're just about at that point now where we've actually figured out what we're doing. So it'll only get better from here going up into season 3.
I need to mention
if I can add something to
please,
that.
Please.
Yeah. It's just that the last episode, we went looking for 5 things that were remarkable that happened to us during the week. And we just listed this, and we went back and forth very quickly and over about 20 minutes. And we were so excited by what this felt like. We weren't looking at the dirt. We were looking through the trees at the blue sky. And if we could look that way, we wouldn't be looking for so much dirt, which seems to be so up to our necks in it at the present moment. But we were looking for a better, more resilient and more sustainable future for our world. And so we're just going to experiment to see whether we can do that on our last episode, whether we can go back and forth with the good that we can see. Take a road that leads to good.
Well, we could go on.
Bill,
Yes, go ahead, Sky.
I'm just going to wrap out and say what a wonderful experience. I hope that I was hesitant because these are friends and you are friends, and sometimes you introduce friends to each other and sometimes they get along and sometimes they don't. But I hope, and I am so grateful for this experience. And I think what we discovered yesterday in filming T3 is looking for good. And that was an amazing discovery, because we started this journey, as I said, as a 3-legged stool, or maybe the Hobbit and the Wizard. And I was always wondering if I was Frodo or Samwise Gamgee, but we're still figuring that out. But we definitely have Graham as our wizard. And this journey that we're on is so exciting and fun. So thank you for letting us have fun together.
So, Graham, you don't know, but we use the ASL applause thing here because this is a very visual meeting. And we are so honored to have had you here today. It has been such a fabulous day. I've enjoyed this immensely. I hope maybe Sky can talk you into coming back again sometime.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you. And may I just say to you, Bill, that I think you did a wonderful job of subbing for Alex.
Oh, well, thank you.
I was once asked to take over the Tonight Show for a week, and Venus said, don't give up your day job. So, Bill, I think you did a great job today.
Well, thank you so much. That's very sweet of you to say. We will all be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday, which is typically education. So specifically, if you're a teacher, make sure that you can come in if you have teacher challenges. I think tomorrow, I know Friday and Saturday have traditionally been us trying to help the educators.
Tomorrow is production.
Oh, tomorrow's production, then Saturday will be education.
Yeah, Saturday is education, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the correction. So we'll all be back here tomorrow. I don't think Mickey's here. I don't think we have our closing music. I think it's just we're going to punch the button now. I'm back to host, so I can end the whole thing for everybody. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful day. I've enjoyed the whole thing, and I truly appreciate knowing all of the people on the panel. Graham, Faith, we truly appreciated having you here. It was a wonderful, wonderful hour plus, and let's do it all again sometime. So goodbye, everyone. Thank you for coming to Office Hours. Alex, hopefully we'll stop in tomorrow as well. Bye.